Right now, in a small fire station in Livermore, California, there is a light bulb that has been glowing for over 120 years. It was switched on in 1901, back when cars were still a novelty and the Wright brothers hadn't made their first flight yet. It has survived 2 world wars, the rise of the internet, and every single phone you've ever owned. It even has its own webcam, watched by people all over the planet, just in case the day finally comes when it blinks out. But here's the strange part. This bulb isn't some miracle of lost technology. It's not made of anything magical. The truth is, we could build bulbs like this anytime we wanted to. We just choose not to. Because back in 1924, the most powerful lighting companies on Earth got into a room together, and they made a quiet agreement to make your light bulbs worse on purpose. And to understand why anyone would do something that backwards, we have to start with a problem that was secretly terrifying every executive in the entire industry. In the early days of electric light, every company was locked in a race. Whoever could build the brightest, longest-lasting bulb would win the most customers. And they got good at it. Really good. By the 1920s, the average light bulb could burn for around 2,500 hours, and some companies were proudly advertising bulbs that lasted even longer than that. From where you're sitting, that sounds like a win for everybody. Better products, happier customers, what's not to love? But if you were the one running these companies, it was actually a slow-motion disaster. Think about it like this. If you sell someone a bulb that dies in a couple of months, they have to come back and buy another one a few times a year. But if you sell them a bulb that lasts for years, you've just lost a paying customer for years. The better their products got, the fewer bulbs they sold. They were, in a strange way, putting themselves out of business by being too good at their jobs. So the biggest names in the industry started quietly looking for a way out. And the solution they landed on was so bold and so secret that they had to leave their own countries just to pull it off. 2 days before Christmas, in 1924, a group of men quietly gathered in Geneva, Switzerland. These were not small players. In that room sat representatives from Osram in Germany, Philips in the Netherlands, General Electric from America, and the biggest lamp makers from France, Britain, Hungary, and even Japan. Together, they controlled almost all of the world's light, and they signed an agreement to form a company with a name absolutely dripping in irony. They called it Phoebus, after the ancient Greek god of light. On paper, Phoebus was about cooperation and shared standards, nice and friendly. In reality, it had a much darker job. The members carved up the entire globe like a pie, each company getting its own territory where the others promised not to compete. They agreed to keep their prices nice and high, but the centerpiece of the whole deal was one specific rule, and it's the reason we're all here today. From that moment on, no light bulb made by these companies was allowed to last more than 1,000 hours. That's about 41 days, if you left it on around the clock. They were taking a 2,500-hour product and deliberately slashing its life by more than half. But a rule on paper means nothing if nobody actually follows it. So the cartel built a machine to make absolutely sure that everybody did. This is the part that still feels hard to believe. The companies set up a central testing laboratory in Switzerland, and every member was required to mail in samples of their own bulbs. The lab would screw them in, leave them burning, and carefully record exactly how long each one survived. And if your bulb dared to live too long, you got punished for it. There was an actual price list. For every 100 hours your bulb went over the limit, you had to pay a fine in Swiss francs. The longer your bulbs lasted, the more money you lost. So for the first time in history, the engineers at these companies were handed a truly bizarre assignment. Their job was no longer to build the best possible product. Their job was now to make it worse, on a schedule, without making it obvious. They messed with the electrical current and the voltage, and they redesigned the thin tungsten wire inside the bulb so it would burn out sooner, but in a way that looked completely natural to the customer. Keep that last part in your mind, because the exact same move is being pulled on you today, just with fancier toys. But for now, back to the bulbs. It worked perfectly. Records show the average lifespan sliding down year after year, drifting from around 1,800 hours toward that magic 1,000-hour target. The plan was a total success, and then the whole thing fell apart, for a reason nobody in that room had ever planned for. The cartel had wanted Phoebus to run for a full 30 years. It didn't even make it 15. A few things brought it down. Companies that never joined started selling cheaper, longer-lasting bulbs and stealing customers right out from under them. The members began squabbling among themselves. And then the Second World War broke out. And it's pretty hard to run a friendly global business meeting when the countries involved are busy fighting each other. By 1939, Phoebus was finished. But here's the twist that really matters. Even though the cartel died, its big idea absolutely refused to. People had now seen, in black and white, that you could make more money by building things designed to break. Around the same time, an American named Bernard London wrote a pamphlet with a wild proposal. He suggested the government should force every product to come with an expiration date, so people would be legally required to throw things away and buy new ones, all to pull the country out of the Great Depression. A little later, a designer named Brooks Stevens gave this whole concept its famous name. He called it planned obsolescence, and he added a clever second flavor to it. You don't even have to make a product break, he realized. You just have to make people want the new version so badly that they toss out the old one while it's still working perfectly fine. That single idea was about to escape the world of light bulbs and quietly crawl into almost everything you own. Let's jump to today and start with the device that's probably within arm's reach of you right now, your phone. Back in 2017, people started noticing that their older iPhones were mysteriously getting slower. A lot of them figured the phone was just worn out, so they went and bought a brand new one. Then Apple admitted what was actually happening. The company had quietly slipped in a software update that deliberately slowed down phones with older batteries. Apple said it did this to stop the phones from suddenly shutting off, which is a fair point. But the problem was, it never told anyone, and a sluggish phone is an incredibly convincing reason to go buy an upgrade. The backlash was enormous. Apple ended up paying out hundreds of millions of dollars in settlements, and a consumer watchdog in France slapped it with a separate fine for misleading its customers. Now think about your printer. Many printers contain a tiny chip that counts the pages you print, and some are quietly programmed to simply stop working once they hit a certain number, declaring themselves dead even when nothing is actually broken. Ink cartridges run the same trick, claiming to be empty when there's still usable ink sloshing around inside. The faces have changed and the gadgets have gotten shinier, but the ghost of that 1924 agreement is still hiding inside the thing sitting on your desk. Which raises a pretty obvious question. If this stuff is everywhere, is anyone actually trying to stop it? It turns out the answer is yes. Slowly but surely, people are pushing back, and the law is finally starting to catch up. France was one of the first to act, making it an actual crime to deliberately shorten a product's life just to force people to replace it. The country also rolled out a repairability score, a simple rating from 1 to 10 stamped right on electronics, so you can see at a glance how easy something will be to fix before you ever buy it. The wider movement is called the right to repair, and it's spreading fast. New rules across Europe are forcing companies to make spare parts available and to design phones with batteries you can actually swap out yourself, instead of gluing the whole thing shut. Places like Austria have even started handing people money to repair their old gadgets instead of tossing them in the trash. The fight is far from over, and the big companies are not exactly thrilled about any of it. But for the first time in a very long time, the people who actually buy the products are starting to win a few rounds. And it all traces right back to that one little bulb we started with. That bulb in Livermore was never really supposed to exist. It's a leftover from a brief moment in time, right before the people in charge decided that things lasting too long was bad for business. For more than a century, while countless newer, better bulbs have been bought, burned out, and thrown away by the millions, that one stubborn little light has just kept on glowing. It doesn't owe anyone a new purchase. It isn't waiting around to be replaced. It simply does the one job it was built to do, the same way it has every single day since 1901. And every time it flickers on for another shift, it quietly asks the one question those men in that Geneva room never, ever wanted us to ask. What if we just built things to last?